Yo, how's it going, you guys? It's Market Scraper. It's been some time since my last update. Let's talk a little bit about Tesla stock and Palantir stock, and if there's some things that are going against what we've been thinking about, or if they're going in line with what we've been talking about. Also, if there's anything noteworthy to point out. In addition, some things that I'm personally been doing with these positions. Maybe you're interested in the kind of things that I'm doing for these positions and various option plays that I've been doing lately as well. So I'll share some of those things. It's not something that I always necessarily talk about, but it might be something that could be of interest. None of this is financial advice, it's just my own journey and some things that I've been doing, and maybe that could be interesting. So let's talk about Tesla stock first. We've been talking about a few things here. The most important thing are these moving averages down below here, primarily the 200-day moving average, along with the just our trend line that we've been following, and this trend line goes, from back here as well. And so this trend line, if you've been following it, it's been respecting the trend line, it's been respecting the 200-day moving average, and that's been just going perfectly. So what is happening right now too? So we can see that we're having this move here. We have this basically this bull flag forming here, and we can see that basically it looks like we're just breaking out of this actually. So what would be the expected amplitude of this type of move is the next question. So if we take basically this amplitude of this move here, we can put it right over here, and this is kind of the expected move based on this amplitude from this bull flag. So that is something that could be interesting to watch out for. And what is this level right here? Actually, it's interesting that this is either extremely close to or just shy of. This is actually a very interesting level here. We're talking about basically the high here, which is literally 780. 780 is a very interesting level because it corresponds also. So we're talking about this 780 level right here. And that's basically what we're looking at right here, a little bit above that right here, basically right where this line is here. It also corresponds with a few points right here. This is basically 780. If we look at the point over here, we can see that the low here is exactly 780 and 10 cents. That is interesting. So 780 is our next interesting level that we're going to be watching out for the stock to go to. And in addition, a significant pullback area would be, we have this dotted line right here that we've been following, and we've been expecting Tesla stock price to eventually interact with this line here, and I still think that's the case. Yet we also are going to keep in mind of 780, and there could be some resistance here because we have people that probably want to sell out of the position. Again, this will be a little bit different this time. Just keep in mind, last time we saw a significant rejection right around the 780, and we literally talked about that as we saw this rise here. We talked about how we expected 780 to be our rejection point. We thought we were going to fill this gap right here and then get rejected. And I believe that's exactly what we did. Did we actually even fill this gap here? The low here was 777. Okay, so yes, exactly. So we did just that, and you can look at the videos in the past during this time, and that's what we've been talking about. And so that was very interesting. The thing this time, when we go here again, so you can see we had a major rejection here. I would expect likely to have some sort of resistance here, but this time when we go to this level of 780, it's not going to be the same thing in terms of like we might hit it and then we might bounce off of it. And then I expect us, though, to, after some consolidation, maybe underneath it, to break through, though. I do think that we're going to break through it, though. But you can see that it is our next target. So I think that once we see a rise in price to 780, I do think it's going to spend some time around 780, whether it's going to be underneath it or around it. We'll just see some consolidation around this level before being able to go the next leg up. And again, maybe we'll see some major resistance around this trend line here, and maybe just not able to get above this trend line. That is actually very possible. We may not be able to get above this trend line. We could get a significant rejection, or just, eventually we hit the highs that bounce into this trend line possibly. We're keeping an eye on this to see how that plays out. Now, what's going on with Palantir stock? We can see right off the bat that if we've been paying attention to this trend line to the downside here, ever since my last update, we respected this trend line very well. We can see that, after we talked about this breakdown and, reclaiming this trend line, and so we thought that this was going to be a significant trend line here. We stayed above it. I was extremely bullish during this, actually. So one thing that I did during this time here is the same exact strategy that I employed back here, actually. The exact same strategy. So what did I do back here? It was right around here where I started to buy call options. And I usually am one that is more of a seller of options. That's kind of the thing I like to do. However, I was pretty bullish on Palantir stock. I started buying some call options here. And then Palantir went down even further. And then what did I do? I bought more than double the amount of call options down here. And I ended up scaling out of the position. Once the position was in the green, I ended up scaling out, and completely exited the position probably right around here. Okay, now what's happening this time? So a similar strategy. We were, I think, right around, I believe here, somewhere around here. I think, right, it was on this day here, I believe, is when I started buying in call options. And did I double up? I absolutely doubled up again. So when we were around here during this significant time here, I started to double up my call options. And the amount of call options that I purchased here were probably double that of this whole experience here, because the thing here is that, and this was a lot of call options I bought here, but the thing is that there was a lot more uncertainty for me with this stock, actually. It was kind of unclear how low we could potentially go here. I mean, I had talked about certain levels here that I had expectations of. I think we won't go lower than these areas over here. And so that's kind of exactly what played out here. So I had these ideas, but I guess I didn't have the exact confidence that, when this would bottom, how long it would take. But since this was a true bottom, and I talked about it before in the past, that this was really a true bottom, in my opinion, for quite some time, I do think, until there's a massive sell-off in the broader stock market. So because I had that reference here, I also was looking at amplitude moves to the downside. So what that basically means is that I was looking at this type of move to the downside, and then I would take that amplitude and I would bring that over here, and kind of that was my expectation of how far down we could actually go. And if we look at this, interestingly enough, that amplitude matches almost spot on of how far we actually ended up going. So having these references of the past can be very powerful sometimes. And also, I had the assumption that this was a true bottom for a significant amount of time, and that gave me the assumption, and gave me the leverage and confidence that we weren't going to go below this. So I kind of knew when I wanted to buy, and I could actually be more aggressive than I was able to be with buying call options over here. So I bought a ton of call options over here. And so what am I doing currently? Am I still buying? Am I selling? Let's take a look at what I have been doing. So like I said, I bought here, doubled up here, and I've been buying, a few here and there along the way as well. And then after this pop, on this day here, this is when, and so the amount of call options I have, and it's kind of relative to, the premium that I'm paying for it and my strike price and all of these things. But I had 80 call options. And on this day here, I sold 30 of them. So I have 50 call options. So I didn't quite sell half, but I sold whatever that percentage is, a significant percentage, to de-risk, to lock in some profits here. I do think this is going to go higher, but we'll take a look at how high we think we're going to go, and we'll also take a look at the risks and the downside. So, okay, now enough about what I have been doing. Let's take a look at the technicals here of what I see. But I hope you guys thought that was pretty interesting, like I guess the confidence of using something that I had in the past over here and being able to kind of double down with my strategy and having certain assumptions, being more confident in what I'm doing here. And if X is true, if A plus B equals X, you can kind of flip that equation around, meaning we have some assumptions. We thought that this was a actual bottom over here. If we were unsure that this was the actual bottom here, then we don't really know how far down we could go. Like if we think that that what's going on in the moment is even worse than what's happening back here, then yeah, we could go even further. And then how far could we go? All the way down here, possibly. So, but we had the assumptions, and our assumptions have been correct so far, and that's been, I've been able to profit on that greatly. So we can see over here that we first thing that we want to look at here is that one thing is that we have a gap right here. So we have this gap right here. We see this gap. This is something that we have to be mindful of, that this could be filled. Now there are a few things to pay attention to. First of all, we broke above this moving average right here. So that is pretty significant. Now, what is this moving average here? This is the 20. Is this the 20? This is the 50 period moving average. And this 50 period moving average is super significant for Palantir stock. We can see that every time we broke below the 50, we basically had a hard time getting above the 50. We were completely rejected over here on the 50, and again rejected over here on the 50. And then once we broke above it, good things happened here, right? We had good things happen here. Once we broke below the 50, we had a struggle period of time of getting above 50. Now, once we broke above 50 now, and we just did, I have expectations that this should be a significant move to the upside, but we have to be watching the 50, that we do in fact stay above the 50. And again, we have some interesting, with this gap here, gaps, stocks like to fill these gaps here. So this will be interesting to see. We have one force pushing us above. The fact that we're above the 50, that gives us kind of encouragement that we want to stay above the 50 and good things happen like we've seen in the past. What the past doesn't, tell us what's going to happen in the future, but we can see that traders, when traders have been seeing on Palantir going above the 50, traders been pushing the stock higher. This has just been what's been happening, and we can kind of, again, we're making these assumptions. If we're making these plays on these stocks, just like the assumptions I made, why I thought that we weren't going to go below the previous low, and if that was the case, how can I use that knowledge, if it's true and to a certain degree of confidence, basically use that to my advantage, right? So those are the things that we're looking at, and it's all about risk to reward. We have to look at the risk, look at the reward. In some cases, the risk to reward is completely outsized and dwarfed, and these are basically the scenarios that we want to take advantage of. So we can see that this is a interesting scenario that's playing out interestingly. I would say that if we didn't create a gap here, I'd be even more bullish, but I am bullish at the moment here. And in addition, we saw that Cathie and ARK Invest bought over 5 million shares of Palantir, and this is pretty insane and ridiculous. I've never seen them buy that much. I think I've seen them buy 2 million, a little bit more than 2 million shares at a single time was pretty massive for them in the past. And beyond that, it's usually little more than 1 million shares that they buy when they're really going heavy on Palantir. So to see them buy well over 5 million shares, this was ridiculous. And this happened on the Thursday here. This happened right after we heard earnings that day, right? So that's what happened there. And this is very bullish on the stock. So we have a ton of catalysts happening. We have good earnings. We have Cathie and ARK Invest buying a ton of shares. We have other institutions buying shares as well. So this is looking like a nice setup, and this is also, if we were to zoom this in on over the week this is actually starting to look, this looks bullish on a chart. It's looking like a nice bull flag forming here actually too, for a nice breakout. So as long as the market doesn't just tank on Monday. But anyway, we can look at this. What am I expecting here? I talked about basically on this move to the upside. In one of my videos, I talked about the pattern that I'm seeing unfolding kind of in the more medium term. Basically, I told you guys that we had a move to the downside here and this consolidation, basically a falling wedge here. And I think that this is kind of flipping into something else. And now, what else do I think that this is becoming actually? So we can see that basically in the past, this was kind of more of the falling wedge kind of thing and just consolidation. The difference this time, and again, I mentioned this before in the past, is that this time I see something more like, the opposite going on actually, kind of going to the upside and kind of going higher and higher to the upside. That's the story that I presented to you guys in the past. Now, in terms of how these things would actually look like is kind of, beyond me. I don't know how these things would play out, but so we can see that in terms of where we are right now, it is playing out in terms of this classical sense of this is what we can see here is that the main point of this structure is to say that we have a high here, we have a low that is higher than this previous low, so check. We can see that low, and then we have a higher low so far, so check. Now, what is the other implication here? The other implication is that we have a high here, and then we have a higher high coming up. So what does that mean? Well, we do know that I've been talking about forever that I expected this gap fill over here to be filled, and I'm pretty sure this is like $27.51 because like I'm ingrained with that number here. Okay, well, I was wrong. $27.53. Okay, so 53 cents. We were off by 3 cents, it seems like, I think, right? $27.50 is where the highs ended up going. I was saying that I think we're going to go fill the gap here. So I was 3 cents off in where I thought the stock was going to actually go. But if we are following this pattern, this broader pattern that I brought up a while ago, ever since we started to break out of this pattern over here from the lows here, because we were assuming that this was the lows. So basically what that means is that this gap is going to be filled then, because we are expecting that we are going to see a higher high before we start to go to the downside. So we'll see if that actually plays out, and we can see if this pattern that we thought is happening will play out, and this can give us some kind of idea of what we can expect. And I hope you guys got some value from this content. If you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.